Hey there, and welcome back to our Read Through the Bible in a Year series. Here we are, week number 2, day number 2. We read from Genesis chapter 27 through 31. Let's jump right into it. I have 3 main points I want to make today with some devotional thoughts to go along with those. The first one starts right at the beginning. In chapter 27, it starts with Isaac getting old, and he's going to bless his oldest son. He wants to bless his oldest son Esau. Right away, there's a problem, I wonder, with this. A couple things going on here. We might remember that in our previous reading, Esau had sold his birthright to his brother Jacob for a bowl of stew. Now, whether that was right of Jacob to charge his brother for a bowl of stew and to charge him his birthright, probably not. That's another story. But nonetheless, Esau had given away his birthright, all the rights he had as the firstborn son. So already here, Isaac is kind of not worried about that, and he still wants to bless his older son Esau. But there's an even bigger problem going on here. Assuming that Isaac and his wife Rebekah communicated at all, which I'm going to assume they did, we might remember when, right before the boys were born, Jacob and Esau, Rebekah had asked God what was going on with these boys. With these boys inside her womb, because they were always kind of fighting with each other while they were still in the womb. And this is what the Lord said to her back in chapter 25. 2 nations are in your womb. 2 peoples from within you will be separated. 1 people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. So from the very beginning, God has already kind of put it out there that the older will serve the younger. That Esau will serve Jacob. So God has spoken, and yet Isaac, who I am assuming, and I know we shouldn't make assumptions, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and take a guess that information had been shared with him by his wife, that Jacob would actually be over Esau, that Esau would serve Jacob. And so we ask ourselves, well then why is Isaac still trying to give the blessing to his older son Esau? Now, I can't say I know the answer to that, but it did make me think, and this is what it made me think about. It's almost as if Isaac was going against, or trying to go against, something God had made pretty clear. And so I asked myself, do I ever do that? And I ask us, do we ever do that? Are there times where God makes something pretty clear to us, and we just go our own way? We keep pushing forward with our own agenda. And the answer is yes. Number 1, sin. Anytime we sin, that's what we're doing. We know God's plan. We know God's commandments. We know what God desires for the way we should live. So anytime we sin, we're just going forth with our own thing. We're saying, you know what? I know you said this, God, but I'm gonna go ahead with my own agenda. So sin is that. But there's lots of times where this could happen. A specific example might be you're in a relationship that God's made pretty clear to you. He doesn't want you in that relationship. There's some stuff going on in that relationship, and you need to end that relationship. But we push forward with our own agenda. Well, God, that's not what I want. I want to keep this going. And we push forth with our own agenda, and we go contrary to something God has made pretty clear to us. So let's be real careful about pushing ahead with things that God has made clear to us. When we feel pretty certain, even if it's in something that we're not sure about, but we feel fairly certain that God has spoken in one direction or another. Maybe it's about what you're going to do with your summer. Maybe it's about where you're going to go to school. Maybe it's about whether you should take a certain job or not. And we have pretty good peace that God has spoken in a particular direction on that. Let's don't press on with our own agenda, which may be contrary to what God has said. But let's listen to God and follow His commands. Second thing I wanted to talk about, I'm going to kind of jump ahead in the reading and then come back to my third point. The second thing, fast forward to where Jacob is now living in the land of his relatives, and he's married to Rachel and to Leah, and he starts having children. Okay, something that really jumped out at me is with Leah. Leah, when she started having her children, and I want to read this section and make a point about it. At the end of chapter 29, it says, she became pregnant, she gave birth to a son, she named him Reuben. For she said, it's because the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now. And she gets pregnant again, and she has a boy named Simeon. She says, because the Lord heard that I am not loved, He gave me this son. again she conceived, and then when she gave birth to a son, she said, "Now at last my husband will come attached to me. So I've borne him 3 sons, so he was named Levi." Notice in all of these, the focus was on these children and what it meant to the relationship that she was so desperately seeking after with her husband Jacob. Remember, Jacob loved her sister Rachel more than he loved her, even though he was married to both of them. And with the 3 kids, her focus is about how can I make Jacob love me more. But now look what happens. I think this is interesting. In the final verse of chapter 29, it says, "She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, 'This time I will praise the Lord.' So she named him Judah. Then she stopped having children." And even the name Judah sounds like the Hebrew word for praise. So I think it's interesting. Her focus finally shifted. "This time I will praise the Lord." So it just kind of reminds me that we always need to have our focus in the right place. Our focus always needs to be on God, and on what God's doing, and on praising God, and on thanking God for everything that's going on, whether it's good times or whether it's bad times, because we know He is with us in the middle of those. Let's keep our focus squarely where it needs to be, not looking away from God, but keeping our eyes on God and our focus squarely on Him at all times. The final point I want to make today is about Jacob himself. And we'll talk more about this on the next day's reading as we get a little bit more into the character of Jacob. But Jacob is a complicated character. We see a lot of examples in here where he lives up to his name. His name, Jacob, means deceiver. We see lots of ways where he's deceiving, where he's always trying to get the best for himself. From the very beginning, he's born, comes out grabbing on to the heel of his brother Esau, who comes out ahead of him. So from the first moment, he's jockeying for position. We see him in his interaction with his brother Esau when Esau is hungry and wants some of the stew that Jacob has cooked, and instead of being a good brother and saying, "Here you go," he says, "Give me your birthright." So we see him there trying to deceive and trying to maneuver and jockey for the best position. We see him being the ultimate deceiver in the way he plots with his mom and steals the blessing away from his brother. Even though I've already discussed where maybe Isaac shouldn't have been giving Esau a blessing to start with, it doesn't make it right the way Jacob went about getting it, though, deceiving his father into thinking that he was actually his brother Esau. We see in the way he interacts with Laban with the flocks. Now Laban had been cheating him, of course. Laban had not been doing right by him with his wages, but still Jacob takes it on himself to deceive Laban and make it so that he gets the best of the flocks instead of Laban getting the best of the flocks. So we see throughout all of this where he's complicated in that a lot of his character is about deception and trying to get the best for himself. But we also see where there's a lot of his character is about he's somebody that wants to be blessed. He is someone who desires blessing. I think in today's reading, seeing what he did at Bethel really gives us an idea about this other side of his character. Remember, he's on his way to Laban. He's on his way to live in the new country temporarily, and he has that dream while he's sleeping one night. And he wakes up the next morning, and it says Jacob made a vow. He said, "If God will be with me, will watch over me on this journey, will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely, and the Lord will be my God." See here, he's just asking God, God, please be with me. God, please take care of me. He's asking for the necessities. He's asking for food. He's asking for clothing. He's asking for safety and to be able to return one day to his father's house. And here I just see him as somebody, we see on the one side this character of the deceiver, but here we see on the other side this character of one who's just, asking God to please be with me, God. God, please be with me. I need you. I need you in this time. He's somebody who desires to be blessed. We're going to really see this come to a head in the next reading, for the next day's reading, where Jacob is going to kind of have a reckoning, a showdown, if you will, where these two parts of his character are going to kind of come together. The part of him that's the deceiver, versus the part of him that at his core, at his heart, is a man who desires to be blessed by God. There's definitely nothing wrong with being a man that desires to be blessed by God. Let's just let God handle the way He blesses us and not try to take it on our own account. But the great thing is that even in his sin, in his going about doing things his own way, is that we see him being blessed time and time again through the passage. He gets the blessing from his father. He gets the blessing of a family with lots of children. He gets the blessing of all the flocks that are increasing. And of course, not trying to justify. The Bible never speaks of justifying the actions he took, but at the same time notes that he was continually being taken care of by God. And I love in this book that I have, when it talks, the section that talks about Jacob, it says God chooses to use the foolish things of this earth. And so often we are foolish in the way we act and in the way we go about things. But because God is so loving, sometimes He still works through us, and He still works in our lives. It doesn't mean He doesn't call us to account for our sin, or that He wants us to go on living that way. But He loves us. He loves us, and He's gracious to us, and He takes care of us, and He blesses us. And His plans are always going to come through in the end. So today, may we be people who don't try to go against God's plan by following our own plans and our own agendas. May we be people who keep our focus squarely on God. And may we be people who cling to that part of Jacob's character. May we be people who desperately desire to be blessed by God, who seek God's blessings. May we be people who live lives that are holy and set apart for God, and may we enjoy His blessing every day. All right, y'all have a great day. I'll talk to y'all next time.